burned through this area. It was a really catastrophic fire, several thousand hectares in size.
You know, our climate is really changing. So these forests are quite stressed, but as the climate shifts, they're susceptible to fire, insect damage, and really just drought stress.
Climate change is having, well, it's obviously having a very considerable impact on our forests. And the biggest concern that we have is forest health. Beetle populations, wildfires are spreading bigger and faster than we would have expected in the past.
Since 2017, we have experienced catastrophic fires with the burning and the smoke that's emitted off these wildfires, a tremendous amount of carbon release into our atmosphere. We can't afford to have that continue to happen in our atmosphere, and there is a role for forestry and harvesting to be able to mitigate some of those effects of these large wildfires.
The climate emergency in the planet is one area where I think forests can and should be part of the solution. We can understand better trees as carbon sequestering machines, and we can help these trees to do the things that they do best.
You know, the world is desperate for solutions to climate change and the carbon dioxide crisis, and building with wood is really a serious solution to combat climate change. This is a way of removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it in the form of these beautiful buildings.
I really believe right now that architecture has a big role to play in changing some of the big problems we have in the world, whether that's housing or contributing to climate change. What I love about designing and building with wood, it sequesters carbon in the body of the material. Why not use renewable materials that can be sustainably harvested and actually pull the carbon out of the atmosphere? I think we have to be open to change. Issues have come to the fore that we just can't continue to do things the way we did. How we make change in society is we change expectations.
There's a lot of conversations occurring around what our climate is going to look like. We know that it is changing. Since about 2017, there's been a lot more fire on the landscape than the past historic number of years. My name is Jack Darney. I'm a professional forester. I work in the forest industry here in Williams Lake. Why I got into forestry was for my passion for the outdoors and being able to see, touch and feel things in the forest and understand that the work that we're doing is renewable. Now with the climate change and the hotter temperatures, we are experiencing more frequent large-scale wildfires across the Cariboo.
Maybe we'll just go over safety.
How are you finding that are the trees' roots burned out pretty bad?
Yeah, so there's any birch, cedar, and pine.
Yep.
Those are all, pretty much all of them are danger trees. Just a whole tree like this is just holding on by that much now. It's just balance.
Yeah.
Some of it's just balancing in there.
Right.
There's a lot of trees that are leaning on each other also.
Yep.
It's still dangerous. Like, you still have to be very aware of what's going on around you.
When a wildfire starts in these interior Douglas fir stands, there's so much secondary growth and ingress underneath the canopy that the wildfire easily gets up into the canopy of the trees, and they become very, very hot fires, and they move extremely quickly. One of the things that we're very fortunate in the Cariboo-Chilcotin is have a very robust land use plan. There's extensive planning and decision-making that goes into determining if we are going to salvage an area or harvest an area for that matter.
Well, we are going to see what we can salvage. Mother Nature's already come in and caused some disturbance. We may as well utilize what we can. I'm a forester for Tolko Industries. Really, there's 3 pillars of forestry: the economics, the social license, and the environmental responsibility. Sustainability to me is ensuring that everything we take out gets put back.
This is very typical, though, of what we're seeing in the rest of the fire.
Yeah.
This scorching, this degree.
We see wildfires that are spreading bigger and faster than we would have expected in the past, and going beyond what that natural disturbance would normally have been in some of those ecosystems. And in some ways, we've become very reactive in how we choose our stands to harvest, because we're trying to target those places to mitigate some of those forest health concerns.
Yeah, so it burnt here early this summer. Pretty catastrophic fire, really a stand reset. We're really looking at salvaging this area, taking the merchantable timber out, and then reforest it, which is really the key here. We want trees growing back. We want to make sure we're trying to rehabilitate this site. You know, we don't want to see these areas just left in this kind of a state, because it really does negatively impact the whole watershed. The runoff's going to be pretty significant off of this site. So part of what we're doing throughout the Caribou area is looking at how we can harvest some of these sites to ensure that we've got healthier forests and more sustainable forests for the long term, making them resilient.
We're trying to determine if these trees are going to survive or not. And then the other aspect is, even if they do survive, they're still stressed.
If we get another hot summer next summer and these trees are stressed, and now they're going to be drought stressed, the bigger trees will be the most acceptable to beetle for sure.
This is a perfect size for beetle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a beetle right there actually. Right in there, quite a bit of sawdust from them burrowing in. It's definitely got a fair bit of Douglas fir beetle in him. It's girdled the tree and it's starting to die really. The needles turn red.
With climate change, we're watching something that, like the beetle that used to just exist endemically in the forest, that beetle is actually becoming more of an issue. Different insects that are spreading through our stands because drought decreases their resiliency and makes them more susceptible to so many things.
See, this guy's turned red too. I'm gonna walk up here and look at this one. In some cases, these stands are stressed to the point where if they do become infected with some of these forest pests, then they're gonna die. So we have salvaged timber, which has been a focus for us over the last number of years. Yeah, beetle all through. Yep, this guy's full.
Once their populations start to go, they get to be pretty out of control.
Yeah, this one as well.
Yeah, he must be.
Starting to turn too. We had some massive fires just close by that have really attracted the beetle, stressed a lot of trees, and now they're spilling over into these sites. It's really something we got to kind of watch for, that's for sure.
Certainly the climate emergency in the planet, the catastrophic wildfires that happen year over year over year. Sustainable forest management then becomes the framework that enables those forests to hopefully live up to their potential. My name is Paul Robitaille, and I am the Senior Director of Indigenous and Youth Relations with the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. Fundamentally, my role is about building relationships in and around the forest. So at its heart, sustainable forest management it's about relationships. It's about collaboration where diverse individuals can come together who all love the forest and are passionate about the forest and have the opportunity to contribute that passion to create a plan that will work with nature. And ultimately not just do that for today, but do it in a way where future generations can also have that same opportunity to be part of that.
So we're about a 15-minute drive out to a site that's right on the edge of town here that Williams Lake First Nation is doing some stand resiliency, fuel management work to really look at the stalking, reduce the amount of trees that are on the site to get it back into a healthy site. It's really, we've done, the last 100 years in the interior suppressed fire, and that's caused a lot of ingrowth and the stalking to really increase on a lot of these sites. So yeah, and Williams Lake First Nation's been very successful in planning these sites and balancing all of those values.
This area is high priority for us, and looking at the health of the stands and looking at how we're getting creative. Diversify how we harvest the forest in a way that there's more longevity and we do have it and can utilize for future generations, while at the same time also protecting homes in light of potential wildfire activity in the future.
I think you see a lot of communities doing amazing things with trying to clean out some of the younger stands to allow the older trees to grow and become more resilient.
What it's going to do is it's going to knock it down, slow it down enough so that we can save our communities or evacuate people out of the neighborhood. I mean, we seen it in 2017. Fires moved so quickly because prescriptions like this weren't done. They just ripped through. My father-in-law is from Lytton, and as soon as that fire started, I mean, it just ripped right through the whole community, snap your fingers. If you have fire breaks like this, it allows the equipment and the manpower to mobilize and actually knock it down so that we can save homes.
So this area has already been treated. We got hand crews coming around and moving the debris away from the base of trees after logging. And then there'll be an understory burn to get rid of all the other fuels on the ground. There's so much competition that nothing can grow.
See, as a leader, it gives me a better perspective and a better hope that we are listening to what our people are telling us and what the environment is telling us. I really cannot wait to bring the elders back and show them the work that's being done, because this is exactly what they continue to talk about, the health of our forests and looking out for our animals and making sure that we're protecting them and doing our part as stewards of the land.
When we're thinking about forest management today, it's very much based on the paradigm of what would nature do? How do we emulate those natural systems as best as we can, realizing that the forest landscape today is fundamentally influenced by humans and human activity. We need to be working with the forest, and part of that, yes, is harvesting the forest, but it's also regenerating the forest and tending to the forest.
So we're headed west of Williams Lake, and we're going to go and look at some other sites that have been impacted by fire several years ago. And we're going to look at how the reforestation and silviculture activities have been successful there at reestablishing trees.
Some of the misconceptions that people have is what's very visual after we've harvested Whether it be a clear cut or where we've extracted a lot of timber off of there, it can look not aesthetically pleasing. It can look like a little bit of a scar on that landscape. What people don't understand in general is they may not have seen that site prior to what's just occurred there. It might have been a result of salvaging a wildfire where there was 100% of the timber burnt. One of the benefits of harvesting those sites is to reset it and get a forest regrowing there much quicker than nature would have done it on its own. That's encouraging to see.
They're beautiful. So this all burned in 2017. It looks like we planted around 2019. So they planted a mix of pine and fir in here. Lots of fir babies coming in though. These guys are doing really, really well. It is a challenge with our plantations and what species we put back in different places to kind of use your crystal ball and figure out what's going to grow best there in the future. They have different growing styles, so pine will often take up first, but then fir will overtake it in the end.
There is a role for forestry and harvesting to be able to mitigate some of those effects of these large wildfires. We know that reforesting these sites will sequester carbon, and taking some of the damaged stands out, thinning out, creating more stand resilience stands for the future, and also reforesting some of the sites will be a benefit overall for carbon.
Like 35 centimeters.
Yeah, that's impressive.
As a professional forester, all of us want to see the forest move forward in a healthy way into the future for our families. So we have so many experts in how to regrow a forest and all the work being done to watch how climate change is impacting our future forests and what we can do today to facilitate a better, healthier forest tomorrow.
What I love about designing and building with wood is that it really connects you to the properties of the material itself. It really makes you think about the source material, how it was grown, where it was grown, the context, and it sequesters carbon in the body of the material. Why not use renewable materials that can be sustainably harvested and actually pull the carbon out of the atmosphere? The movement right now towards considering mass timber has everything to do with the fact that it is a renewable resource and it is designed by nature to be a carbon sink. I think every grade school child learns about photosynthesis, and the simple formula is that they breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, but retain the carbon to create growth and fiber. So when you harvest a tree, you've harvested the carbon that is in there. And when you use that for a building material and protect it with a high performance envelope so that it exists for another 100 years in that state, you've literally captured the carbon out of the atmosphere and sequestered it, protected it, and used it for means that we need anyway. We are still building. We have a housing crisis. We have to change our fundamental practices. I'm really excited to be working on 2 mass timber projects. One of them is called the Arbor for George Brown College, and it is really an extraordinary building. It is a 10-story exposed mass timber assembly occupancy. That means it's a community building. At its peak, this building can hold 3,400 students. The building's really extraordinary because it's never really been done before. The George Brown process was a really considered one. They decided that the building needed to be future-proof. It needed to be low carbon, meaning mass timber. It had to look at these innovative renewable materials. They looked at it being a net zero carbon emissions building. On top of that, they were looking for design excellence. And that's where we began to team with Acton Austria Architects out of Vancouver, because Acton Austria Architects are the architects of the Brock Commons tall wood building at UBC, which is an extraordinary building. It's 18 stories tall, and for the longest time was the tallest residential mass timber building in the world. So the Arbor may be an exceptional building, but I think it should be the norm. And I think for students, that's what they want. That's what they see. They want to see change. Mass timber in its current state is actually pulling together smaller pieces of timber to make them massive and use them structurally in buildings.
Canadian forestry has a huge role to play in the fight against climate change, and that is this evolution in the mass timber industry to be able to revolutionize the way buildings are being constructed so that they're built in a much more environmentally friendly way. So Element 5 is a mass timber manufacturer. Our facility in Ripon is a small operation, but in that facility we have a press that we can use to make CLT panels. Here in St. Thomas, we manufacture two key components, and that is cross-laminated timber, so these massive panels, but we also make glulam. CLT is a massive wood panel. So it's made by taking 2x6s in parallel, then you apply a layer of glue on top of that. The next row you apply on top perpendicular. So you end up making these cross-laminated timber panels. So a CLT panel is structural. It's used for floors, for walls, and for roof structure. Glulam are similar. They are laminated columns and beams. Combined, we're able to make a variety of buildings out of solid wood.
We make beams and panels for buildings, so any defects is what I do. I fix those. I make it look pretty again. Any sort of defaults in the wood, wanes on the side, we kind of cut those out and we replace them and fill them back in. I mean, I just love working with wood because I generally love being outside in nature, and it just makes me feel like very outdoorsy, and so to me it's definitely huge.
The mass timber industry is plagued to some degree with misconceptions about building with wood. You know, the stereotypical impression is, you know, that it burns, you know, it doesn't last, it's not structurally sound. But there's obviously sufficient research and testing and certification that's been done in our industry to prove that those are only misconceptions. When we're building with wood, what we're doing is we're leveraging our forest's natural ability to absorb carbon dioxide and to store it in the form of these beautiful buildings. Everything that we do is about the environment. So we're really proud about the sustainable aspects that we're incorporating into our supply chain. We now control our supply chain right from forest floor all the way through to finished product. You know, Canada has one of the best managed forests in the world. We would not be doing what we're doing if Canada was not managing its forests sustainably.
By developing new and innovative sectors like mass timber that enable the products to then sequester that carbon for the long term in buildings, I think the broader sustainable forest management field and sector can be a huge part of that global solution to the climate emergency that we're all facing today.
Really, we're just at the very early stages of this mass timber revolution, and everybody recognizes the opportunity in this industry. We'll see more architects, more engineers, we'll see more and more buildings that are built in this environmentally responsible way.
So I love going to sites. So today we're going to walk down to the site of the arbor at George Brown College. It really has just begun, and we are going to meet with the president of George Brown College. I love going on site because that's when you actually see the real human effort that is involved in making any design come to life.
So when you talk about those mass columns and the likes, how big? Like, how big is big?
The typical size is about 1,500 wide, so the size of a door, really. But in the learning landscape, they're even bigger than that, so they're almost 2 meters wide.
So mass timber is a lighter form of construction than standard construction. It's clean, it's quiet, it's less disruptive, and it's incredibly fast.
Quite often when we hear about mass timber, individuals will say, show me an example of the technology and the way that you've done it that we can actually adopt it and use it. And what's amazing about this building is this will be a showcase of what can be done in terms of mass timber, what can be done in terms of sustainability.
If we're going to have massive impact, every building should be considering the mass timber or renewables or carbon sequestering projects.
We now know that the question is, how do we reduce carbon? We have to start making this change. We have to start looking at what is fundamental to our building construction projects and start looking at renewable resources and look at carbon sequestration. So if we're going to continue to build, and we have to, let's do it the right way. Like no other time in history, I would think that right now everybody questions what they think is the norm, whether that's how we treat each other or how we treat the planet. These things have to change. It's become our collective purpose. I really feel this kind of groundswell right now of people trying to make impact, trying to change culture and solve problems. And if we can do that with wood beautifully, I think that that's really where we should be now.